Beware the Ides of March. What does this mean? I'm Michael Moon, and welcome to my YouTube channel, replacing my Facebook Lives where I discuss the current weather, astrological weather, alongside my music. And here I am going to discuss the eclipses of March, April, and why I want to start it with beware the Ides of March. It just keeps going in my mind, this saying. And I'd like to start with where that comes from because it's interesting. It's the Ides of March, or considered the middle of March, which we would think of as the 15th of March, but that's the modern calendar. The original Roman calendar was more of a lunar calendar, from what I understand. And the Ides of March would be the middle of the month of March, which would be the full moon of March. And so the month would start the new moon. Full moon would be the peak middle point. And this particular full moon coming up will be an eclipse, as will the new moon after it. And very strong energies. And I'd like to dive in with this with you and hopefully give you some insights and ways to work with this energy in a positive, fulfilling way. The saying, beware the Ides of March, were not because they were particularly bad, but because the astrologer Julius Caesar warned him to beware the Ides of March. And that was when he was assassinated by Brutus, his friend. So I start with this image. But before that, the beginning of March, which is the new moon coming up, March 10th, March 11th, let's say the early morning of March 11th, is the new moon, so the lunar beginning of the month. And this ties in with where my last video about Chiron and the nodes and the last full moon in Virgo Pisces ties in. And if you haven't seen that, it'd be worth seeing that as well as this, because it really ties into this current month as well, interestingly. First off, we have the new moon in Pisces. How sweet is that? I say sweet because Pisces has a sweetness to it, that mystical, sensitive, gentle, open, compassionate kind of feeling. But it can also be a bit diluted and diffuse. But this particular new moon is interesting in that it is right between Saturn and Neptune. Neptune is a current modern ruler of Pisces, though the real traditional ruler is Jupiter. Jupiter is connected with this in that it's in a positive, uplifting aspect to this new moon. And so we have this Jupiterian, Piscean openness, and you have Neptune coming in that just makes this really open, beautiful energy. And then you put Saturn, the planet that is the most non-Piscean planet, in the middle of it. And now for the last 2 years, we have been dealing with Saturn and Neptune being in the sign of Pisces, really pushing this energy. And what is this energy? As I described in the last video, it is the energy of making the dream real. Saturn is the material reality that we are born into, our body, the walls of our houses, the structure of our society, the structure of life. Neptune is the Shakti, the energy that moves in and around everything, that everything is manifest from but is non-manifest. All possibilities exist, but they're not real. They're just dreams. They're just possible. And then Saturn is what makes it real. And so this is a beautiful, potent combination of bringing dreams to reality, but that's always a struggle, just like birth is. Pushing through that birth canal is difficult. And to become manifest is a process that's difficult. And so there's a pressure with this energy that's very strong and can be frustrating because the dream never matches reality. But the dream is still important to pull us to bring something new into form. Just want to insert an update. So as we move in towards this new moon, you will see in the chart Mars during the new moon is very close square to Uranus. And this is going to cause a lot of pressure and tension building to this new moon, especially as the moon moves through Aquarius, leading up to Pisces and the new moon. So at the time I am releasing this video, it's going to start to feel this intense pressure. And the pressure is wanting to break free in some form or other. And this is going to be particularly felt by people that have around 20-degree fixed sign planets or important points of their chart. And it's going to want to break a habit in those areas of the fixed signs, have a breakthrough even, to really open up to something, a new energy. And that Mars in Aquarius is really triggering that Uranus that's been kind of hanging there for a while and been going back over this point and is now starting to really move forward. And at the 19-20 degree mark that it is at this point, it's going to be working in that area of our charts, really asking for a change of some sort, a shift. And Mars is coming in very strongly at this time, peaking at this new moon. So we've got this Piscean new moon that's very beautiful. We get that Saturnian element, but we also have this Uranian change-making sparks flying. So the whole thing is ripe for insights and some kind of new energy coming through. And you'll see as we go through this whole period of this next couple months is very much connected and aligned to that idea and feeling of something new is being born. And so this is the seeding of this current time, and it tails in with the last full moon where it was also lined up with this Saturnian bringing form from the unmanifest, and this the challenge of that, and yet the magic of it, to be able to make things real that were once unreal. It's a very creative energy and a potent one. But often it can create a feeling of depression, a feeling of giving up, a feeling that it's never possible. Because in trying to make it real, it never matches the dream. And there's this feeling of depression or defeated feeling that can come with this energy because it just feels like it's never going to happen. Also in terms of time, Saturn takes time. Neptune is like timeless. But ultimately, this is a very beautiful new moon to start this process with, because there is this seeding of the dream that we can do here. And it's a great time to really tune in, meditate, feel our connection to the divine, and feel what wants to come into focus. So Saturn will cut. Neptune is like everything's possible, but the dream is the first part of the focus. It's like, okay, well, this is my next step. This is the vision I've been given, whether it's a feeling inside or an idea, but it's diffuse. And then Saturn will focus it in like a laser beam, like a funnel into reality, and manifest that energy, or help manifest that energy, help us to bring it into form. So this new moon, again, early morning of March 11th. You could just say on March 10th, on Sunday, is a good time to just really tune in. Pisces is about the dreaming in. So you can really just take a bath or a walk or just something where you're not in the busyness of life, and allow the dream to come in, but also allow the heaviness or anything where it just you feel stuck. Just be with it and let the next step, Saturn, kind of manifest the next work to be done. And that's what's key here, to connect the dream to the next step, the work to be done. So as we move beyond that new moon, we move towards the full moon, the Ides of March, which is the first eclipse of this eclipse season. And the eclipses are a potent gateway. They're like the full moon of the year, the new moon of the year. They're 6-month cycle as the lunations line up with the nodes. I'll include some charts, but the nodes, as I discussed in my last video, hovering around 15 degrees of Aries Libra. They're always in an opposition. And they show an arrow through the chart. And they've been hovering around the planet or planetoid of Chiron. And I'll go into that in a bit later when it comes to the next new moon. But very important. And this eclipse being in Aries and Libra, now, okay, we have this dream, but now the manifestation of it has to involve others, and it has to involve us coming into our power and finding our center amidst others, but also finding relationship with others from our center, Aries, Libra. And this energy is being kind of pushed by Uranus at this time to really, there's like a kind of, how do we bring in something new? And so I'm going to get into this as we move towards the coming solar eclipse that everyone's been talking about, early April. But this first one, the lunar one, might not get as much attention, but it's still, it's a part of this whole period. And so starting with last month, moving through this new moon, and then culminating next month, or even over the next few months, there's this real potent gateway that hopefully you'll get a sense of by the end of this video. And at the stage of the full moon, which is basically early morning of Monday, March 25th. Again, Sunday would be the day. Sunday night would be the night to tune into this, at least in North America. I think it's about 3 a.m. where I am, Eastern Standard Time. And being at night, if the skies are clear, we should be able to see this lunar eclipse. And again, this is sort of coming into our power and in relationship. And finding that balance point, just like Julius Caesar obviously didn't. Famously, his last thing was, "You too, Brutus?" You know, like everybody being against him. It's interesting how this might relate to the politic of the time, but I won't get into that as much as just the personal level, because it can feel overwhelming and powerless when all this crazy stuff's happening in the world. But what we can do about it is our own internal use of these energies and these gateways for ourselves. And they will be particularly key if they're hitting a personal placement of your chart. So for instance, the new moon in Pisces is 20 degrees of Pisces. So if you have any placements around 20 degrees in either the water signs or in the mutable signs, you're going to feel that new moon extra strong. With this full moon, 5 degrees of Aries and Libra. So if you have any placements connecting to that, it's going to be extra strong. And where this is leading is ultimately the new moon, April 8th, 2024, about 2:20 p.m. This is a solar eclipse that a lot of us in North America might have the chance to see if you happen to be in the eclipse path or near it. But regardless whether you see it or not, the energy is extremely potent. And in this case, we have the new moon at 19 degrees of Aries, very close to the North Node at 15 degrees of Aries. And then we have Venus in Aries, we have Chiron at 19 degrees Aries, and we have Mercury that's just turned retrograde at 24 degrees of Aries. A lot of Aries energy. And anybody that knows a little bit of astrology will think of Aries as the warrior. And there's a lot of that in this chart. But we have Venus here, and we have the warrior, its ruler in Pisces, conjunct Saturn, and this eclipse chart. So this ties back into this new moon and the full moon again. So the Saturn conjunct Mars in Pisces. Again, this challenge of how do we manifest this dream? Mars wants to get it done now, yesterday. And all this Aries is really pushing it. But the ruler of all this Aries is in Pisces. It's like it has to surrender to something bigger. It has to surrender to the divine, and it has to continue with the vision, step by step, by a little step, Saturn. Mars doesn't like being in Pisces. It loves Aries, and it's ruling everything. So the ruler of all this Aries energy is in its most uncomfortable sign of Pisces, because Pisces is cosmic love and surrender. That's the last thing Mars wants to do, is surrender. But it must. And to emphasize that even more, it's conjunct Saturn. So Mars and Saturn are also very difficult bedfellows, because Mars wants to get on with it, move ahead. Saturn is very much about slow and steady. Mars, Saturn in a chart is very much like, okay, don't go into battle, sharpen your sword, get prepared for the coming battle, but you got to pull back. There can be like driving with the brakes on kind of energy if you're trying to push ahead with that Mars, and it can burn you out. So this is a very intense kind of combination where you have all this Aryan energy with an eclipse, which is a super new moon, basically, where there's a new force wanting to come in through this Aryan gateway. And yet, the ruler is conjunct Saturn in Pisces. It can only come through in a ego surrender of some sort. Trusting the new. Aries gets thought of as the warrior, but there's a beautiful sweetness and innocence to it that's very playful, very new, like a newborn baby, like a little baby shoot popping out through the soil. It's very fresh, it's very vulnerable, it's very innocent. And if that side of Aries can really be cultivated and allowed to bring in something new that we're not in control of. We're going to try and want to be in control of it, Saturn. But in Pisces, no, this is a surrendering to something bigger than us. And again, with that Pisces-Saturn kind of quality, it can seem wrong, it can seem bad, it can seem heavy, it can seem depressing, it can feel like it's not happening fast enough, maybe it's never going to happen, will this dream ever come true, all this bad stuff's happening, it's been blocked this way and that way, and it can feel really defeated. And yet, this is not a time to give up. It's a time to surrender. Very important distinction here. It's not a time to give up. It's a time to surrender. Surrender to something bigger. You might have lost the battle, but the bigger thing is still happening, and it's going to unfold. And to trust the innocence of the new energy, that something new is being born out of this, despite it feeling like it's not happening. And there can also be something happening that just feels very uncomfortable, very new, very disconcerting. And in particular, in light of that, again, hearkening back to my last video of the Chiron North Node, that Chiron North Node conjunction that was really triggering a lot of my clients a couple weeks ago is now highlighted even arguably more intensely. So instead of being right on the North Node, it's right on this eclipse. So Chiron is 19 degrees along with the sun and moon, 19 degrees of Aries. Chiron. What is Chiron? I mentioned, again, I harken back to that last video on Chiron, but I have to mention a bit more here because it's so strong. That wound, that brokenness, but also in Aries, the ability to find our truth within things not feeling like they're working out, and to be taught by the suffering of life, to be able to help others despite our limitations, to be able to use our limitations as gifts, to be able to feel the fear and do it anyway, the ability to, despite our feelings of brokenness, helplessness, woundedness, get back up and get into battle and see that we still have different strengths and more understanding and more ability to be focused when we're limited by other things, if that makes sense. So the very limitations can actually help focus us. So in this way, this is where Chiron connects to Saturn. Chiron connects to Saturn and Uranus, literally in its orbit. And so it brings in this new energy, but it's also about honing it down, focusing the possibilities here. So you can see there's a theme happening of honing in to this something new wanting to be born through each of us individually and collectively. And so along with that, at this eclipse time, we have Jupiter quickly catching up to Uranus and Taurus for its once every 14, 15 year, 13 year, maybe 13 year conjunction, where there's a burst of new energy coming through. And this being in Taurus, there's something physical, there's something real about this. So again, like the unmanifest manifesting into something new. So as I mentioned before, it is this something new is something each one of us has within us. It could be small, it could be big, it could be some creative project or an invention or something that's coming through at this time. Not all of us you don't have to quickly scramble to figure that out and make it happen. But if it is happening, this is a time to really go through that birthing process and not to give up, not feel like, oh, this is too hard. You know, a mother giving birth cannot just go, oh my God, this is too painful and too hard. You just have to surrender. You have to let it come through. And it can feel like it's impossible, and yet it's possible. That Saturn Mars is going to feel like it's impossible. It's going to feel like you can't see clearly how this is going to happen, and yet the energy is just coming through. And so again, surrender to it, let it flow through you, if things are coming up in your life that are really intense, there's a very strong healing current to this with the Chiron eclipse energy of there's stuff to be healed. And if you think about it in the yogic tradition way, where the Shakti, the energy, the universal flow of energy that's just the universe, the Piscean, it's the energy of everything. I can't even, there's no words for it, obviously, because comes through us up the channel and can be manifest in our lives as us, but it gets blocked by all our samskaras, the emotional tightness and wounds in us. So the energy has to kind of move through, and it gets blocked, and creates illness, it creates issues in our lives. And that's not a problem. That's just what we're here to do, to learn to just clear through and let the divine love through. But as it does it, it brings stuff up. And it can bring situations into our lives to help us heal them. And at a time like this, especially if this hits your chart individually in a potent way, like if you have something around 19 degrees of Aries, you're going to be feeling that in that part of your chart, where that it hits in your chart. Or if you have anything in the cardinal signs around 19 degrees of Aries, it's going to be pushing it. And so just don't be afraid of it. Just be aware of it. So as when you feel things come up, you can work with them. Go, okay, this is that energy trying to come through. And therefore, you cannot resist it or not give up, not collapse against it or push it away or feel it's wrong. Let it move through. And it can be incredibly healing. And incredibly potent and incredibly intense for some of us. So just be ready for it. It's like being a surfer. It's like, okay, I'm telling you, okay, the wave's coming. And rather than going, oh my God, a wave, run away. It's not a tsunami. You don't have to get to the high hills, but you can get your surfboard out and go meet it, ride this wave, and really bring in some amazing newness into your life over this next 2 months, let's say. And so when I say beware the Ides of March, I mean, beware this energy, this newness that wants to come through, just to meet it and to not be afraid of it. You know, you're not going to be assassinated, I'm pretty sure. But there is this pressure, and it's going to feel like a child that's about to be born, trying to push through this tiny little opening. And the intensity of that can be very uncomfortable. So we're coupling this with a Mercury retrograde. So that aligns on top of that Mars in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces conjunction to, it's like bring it inward. Even though the energy wants to push out, there's an inwardness to it that it's like it's working on us individually. And as the Jupiter-Uranus comes together, there's like something can be born from this. And this will lead us through May, and then through, I'm going to do another video very soon that's going to look at the next few years, because this is kind of a birthing into something that's really unfolding over the next few years, and it's pretty epic. And though many people, I'm sure, are talking about it, I've got my own statement around it. But we're going to see the first vestiges of that as Jupiter is racing through Taurus. It hits that Uranus, and then by the end of May, actually enters Gemini very quickly. And that's going to be the first taste of something new. And that's going to continue. Really, you're not going to start getting the full extent of that till next year. So I'll get into that another time. I'm Michael Moon. Thank you for tuning in. Blessings.